once you gain traction, though, once you start to understand what you're doing, we've definitely found the value of it, and we've had to rely on it as well. The qualifications market in the UK isn't growing massively for vocational technical qualifications.
Hello and welcome to the Test Community Network Weekly Update. My name's Tim Minette. I hope you're all safe and well. If I sound a little croaky today, it's because I've got COVID. Trust me, though, it's not catching through here, so you should be okay. So I'll rattle on sounding a little bit husky today. So just a reminder, we've got the Looking Beyond Assessment Network workshops that are coming up. There's 4 dates in August for you to take part in that. I'm going to share a quick clip just to give you a bit of an idea as to what's involved in these amazing workshops that you can sign up for.
Hello, Tim Minette here. Hope you're all safe and well. Now, have you been looking and hearing about all these amazing generative AI solutions, but not quite putting it into the frame of how it's going to affect assessment? Well, I'm running 4 workshops in August. They're going to be repeated sessions, so pick whichever one you can make. And I'm going to be looking at the amazing solutions that are coming along. So generative AI solutions for image generation, video generation, music and audio generation. We're looking at cloning as well, looking at cloning yourself or how the impact that might have on the assessment space. And finally, we're looking at augmented space and the convergence of all these technologies that are going to be coming along. So join me in August for one of my amazing Looking Beyond Assessment workshops. I'll see you there.
There you go, get yourself signed up for those. Lots of fun to be had. Very intimate sessions we're going to do, so 9 people maximum per workshop, all online and virtual. And it's just an opportunity really for you to get your head around all these amazing generative AI solutions that are out there and start to place them within the context of assessment. We're going to look beyond the kind of usual, let's create some items, let's create some STEM, etc. We're going to look at some of the image and multimedia opportunities that they present and go a little bit beyond as well and do some prediction for the future, which will be really fun. So get yourself signed up to that. Also next week, we won't have the normal update. We're going to have a webinar next week, and that's going to be sponsored by Excelsoft. And this is a webinar with the team from TQ UK, which is an awarding body based in the UK. And we're going to be talking about functional skills in there as well. So they've done some great stuff, making functional skills on demand for students to test outside of normal working hours, which is really helping support their work and mental load. So make sure you get yourself signed up to that. So it's, go to the Test Community Network website if you want to sign up to it, but that's on the 25th of July. Get yourself registered, and we'll see you next week for that excellent webinar. Also, just gone live is the latest episode from the It Depends podcast with myself and Amanda Danis, and this time we talk about performance testing. I'm going to share a quick clip just to give you an insight as to what to expect from this podcast.
As public safety or the impact of the job or the importance of the job or the seriousness of the job increases, so does the need for it to be performance-based. I don't really want to have a veterinarian or a ship's pilot or a doctor who's not been certified with an exam that was performance-based.
There you go. So anything you see and hear, if you want to go to the testcommunity.network and subscribe for free as well, so you get alerts through into your inbox. And you know, it's full of rich. It's full of information. I'm quite seriously poorly today, but full of lots of information. So please do check that out. We'll start with our interview with Jenny in a second. I'm just going to run through some of the events that are coming up. Just one kind of item to bring to your attention. If you're a member of ATP, so whether your organization is a member, you should get an email through if you're registered on their website for the ATP EU AI Act legal alert that's just come through. Now, you can buy this if you're not a member of ATP, but I really do recommend that organizations check this out, because online proctoring education, those kind of things are significantly affected. And though you might think that, well, this is in the EU, we're not testing in the EU, it's only going to, it's only going in one direction. So, you need to be on top of what's happening with that regulation, how it's going to impact you and your work. So please do check that out. Upcoming events, virtual events. So One Ed Tech, we've got a webinar coming up. These aren't your parents' micro-credentials. Interesting one, interesting title. Another interesting title here for a webinar as well is the ABCDE and I of subject matter expert recruitment. So a lot to expect there from the Institute of Credentialing Excellence webinars. I do believe you have to pay for that if you're not a member, but may be worth checking out. This one you don't have to is the ATP Global Coffee Chats. So Nina at ATP has been organising these, and this time she's got two very interesting guests coming on to talk about using AI for good within security testing. Credible, they've got a webinar coming up, state of credentialing webinar, so it's worth checking that out. We also have Performance Testing Council, providing access to Microsoft Learn during exams, so interesting one to check out there as well. And then, as I've mentioned, we've got the webinar for next week for the Test Community Network, the one about empowering functional skills learners. Finally, e-Assessment Association is looking a little bit beyond from next week, but e-Assessment Association have got e-marking essay questions, special interest group as well. Now I'm going to play you, whilst I'm running this, I'm going to play the in-person events that are coming up, but we're now going to move over to my interview with Jenny. So Jenny Patrickson works for Active IQ, which is part of the NCFE group, I believe. And she gave a presentation at a conference, the AO Forum, a couple of months ago now, where she talked about how they exported their qualifications to the Middle East and North Africa. And it was a really, really fascinating journey that they went on. So I was really keen for Jenny to join me to have a conversation a bit more and share it with you about their experiences. For anyone looking to export, then it's really worth kind of exploring it. So here's my conversation with Jenny.
Welcome, Jenny. Thank you very much for joining me. Now, I heard your presentation at the AO Forum, which is just over a month ago now, about your kind of opportunities in export and how you took your organisation forward to international reaches. I wonder if you just give us an update as to who you are, your work, your organisation you work for, and then we'll kind of just explore that conversation a bit more, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So Jenny Patrickson, Managing Director of Active IQ. Active IQ is an awarding organisation specialist in the active leisure space. So we have around 100 qualifications all around fitness, wellness and physical activity. They range from level 1 through to level 4. We are 21 years old. I had our 20th birthday last year. I've been with the organisation for the last 10 years. Relatively small, although we were acquired by NCFE, which people will be familiar with, about 18 months ago. So NCFE is our parent company. And we have around 500 centres delivering our qualifications. Some of those are in the UK, and now more are coming along internationally, which was the subject of the conversation the other week.
Excellent, excellent. And so what kind of started you on this journey then to go international? What was the driver for that?
Two things really. It was going back to 2017. We were looking at ways to diversify the business. The qualifications market, as we all know, is fairly challenging and has its many challenges to work with and through. At that time, our diversification was around apprenticeships and EPA. So we became an endpoint assessment organisation at the back end of 2017. So that was our main focus for diversification. And we have apprenticeships in our sector, specific to the sector, but we wanted to move out of our sector, and that seemed like the best method and modality for that at the time. We were thinking also of international work, but then COVID came along and kind of hampered that. We'd done some work internationally, which was fairly organic. It just built up through word of mouth without any proactive stance on our part. But during COVID, we could see the benefits of how we could make that international business work more effectively. When we all went online and everything became much more remote, we obviously saw the benefits of being able to adapt assessments and adapt delivery and the methodology that we could use to make it a little bit more easy to manage an international business. So it was really after COVID, we looked at our international offering, looked at how it had built up over the years, but thought, how can we do this more strategically? Where do we want to play? What do we want to do? What do we want to offer in those regions? And so we set about creating a strategy probably around 2021, and it's built up from there. So we've gone from, in the last 5 years, having a handful of centres overseas to around 50 approved training providers overseas now.
Okay, and whereabouts are those people based then? Where are those centres based?
A lot of them in the Middle East. Our focus was on Middle East and North Africa, and it started really there was the United Arab Emirates, big expat community, mainly training providers linked to expats who'd gone out with their training providers over there. So it was an organic thing. But then we created a fair amount of traction in that region. So we've done a lot in Dubai, some work in Abu Dhabi, but we're branching out now into Saudi and other regions in the Middle East. So that was an area for focus. We put some investment into translating our materials into Arabic. We tried a few other areas. We work quite closely with Europe Active, which is a trade association, so to speak, for Europe. But obviously every European country has many different requirements, and that's quite a lot to try and keep up with. And it was easier to focus on regions such as MENA, and then also looking to start to move into APAC and Asia Pacific regions as well.
Now, was it easier because with the Europe, because they've got almost a legacy in there, whereas with the new opportunities in Saudi and places like that, it was a bit of a clean sheet? Was that where it made it slightly easier to kind of land and expand?
Yeah, easier in the first instance in terms of language, because although we've translated it into Arabic, many of the organisations were delivering in English anyway. We work quite closely with what we refer to as reps, registers for exercise professionals, and there's various registers in different parts of the world. And there's one particular register in the UAE, Reps UAE, which is kind of creates the standards and monitors the quality of provision in that region. So we had quite a close relationship with reps, and we knew what their requirements were. We could meet their requirements. We kind of worked hand in hand with that organisation. Obviously, we're offering regulated qualifications, and that's Ofqual regulated, but to meet local need and local requirements, we created some non-regulated international programs as well, and worked closely with Reps UAE to do that. And that made it easier to actually understand the territory and what the requirements were from employers and operators in that region. That was obviously key, just as it is in the UK, though, isn't it? We develop our qualifications to meet the needs of employers and the sector, and that you need to be having those conversations wherever you're operating.
So how did you kind of kickstart that process of having those conversations? How did you find the partners and the people to do that? Did you kind of work off the back of the organic growth that you'd already seen? Did you kind of leverage that, or did you go off and find a new partner structure to work to?
Yeah, a bit of a mixture, really. My background, which I talked about at the event the other week, was initially I'd been involved with Europe Active when they were developing European standards for fitness professionals. That work, when we were creating those standards, you met a lot of people working in the sector in different countries all over the world, mostly Europe at that time. But that extended then to an organisation called ICREPS, which is the International Confederation for Registers of Exercise Professionals. So we built up a lot of contacts through that work in developing standards globally outside of qualifications. So it was leveraging those contacts. But really, when we decided to focus our work on the Middle East, it was around how we built up brand presence in that region, how we created awareness of Active IQ. People knew who we were initially, but it wasn't it didn't run off the tongue in terms of Active IQ this, Active IQ that. So there's various events in those regions. We spent a lot of time, bit of investment attending those events, meeting employers, meeting operators, suppliers, meeting the public, and building up that brand awareness. So we do that every year now. It's an event called Dubai Active. We go to every October, November. And that particular organisation that run the event are now running similar events in Saudi Arabia. So we're moving into that area as well, working with them to forge those links. But also, we've taken advantage of some trade missions as well. With the Department for Education. So we've done, in my previous organisation, we did one to Australia and one to South Africa, and with Active IQ we've done one to Vietnam so far, and they're really, really useful to be introduced to the right people and to talk to people with more of a top-down approach, so you can influence perhaps policy and requirements in the country rather than just working at the bottom up with individual training providers and trying to build your business that way.
Okay, because I've never been on one of those kind of trade missions, because I know the kind of various government departments and people like Jonathan Ledger, they talk quite a lot about those kind of trade missions, and to me they just seem they seem like a bit of a handshake exercise with senior ministers and a kind of introduction. How you're saying that's quite even though you're still speaking to the employers, it's still very important to have that go through that process. Do you think?
We'll come back to that answer from Jenny in a second, but I just want to quickly show you a new feature which we've added into the Test Community Network. And this is a rather funky new feature. In the events section, so if any event that you're looking at on the events listings, we've got all the events that are happening within the assessment space. I'm going to pick on this assessment SIG one here. You have, rather than just saving now, you've got the add to calendar option. What that'll happen if you're logged in as a user, when you click on that, so you need to be logged in to use this, so you need to be signed up, that will then add that to your calendar. So it'll send you then an invite that blocks that in your calendar. Doesn't take it up, it doesn't make it busy, just make sure it's in your calendar so you never miss an event that's coming up. So that's just a reminder about that feature. You still have to register for any particular event or webinar that's on there, but at least it's in your calendar and you know you've got it planned out then that you might actually attend. Back to Jenny now with a bit more information about how they broke out into Middle East and North Africa.
Okay, because I've never been on one of those kind of trade missions, because I know the kind of various government departments and people like Jonathan Ledger, they talk quite a lot about those kind of trade missions, and to me they just seem they seem like a bit of a handshake exercise with senior ministers and a kind of introduction. How you're saying that's quite even though you're still speaking to the employers, it's still very important to have that go through that process. Do you think?
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you can influence policy, and which is something we're trying to do now in Saudi, in terms of what are the minimum requirements for fitness professionals operating, how can you feed into the sort of higher level occupational standards that they would expect to see, and that's work that's currently underway now, rather than just trying to sell qualifications in to individual operators. We still do that as well, and then there's some great work that we've worked with. It ranges very dramatically. Saudi Aramco in Saudi, in terms of massive oil company, and then equally an organisation called Spectrum, which is a ladies only facility. So trying to work to improve facilities and physical activity opportunities for women in KSA as well. So very diverse, but equally working at Ministry of Sport level to try and influence what the country is, the region is looking for in terms of standards and occupational activity.
And I suppose in the Middle East, like other regions, if you're looking at Asia or something like that, you can't really treat, just because you're in one country and you've had success, you can't necessarily take the same model and apply it to another country next door and expect the same success, because the culture is very. Did you encounter that kind of difficulty and adaptation?
We have in the past, yes. I mean, you have hiccups along the way. When we previously with another organisation, when we'd moved into South Africa to have our qualifications delivered over there, working with the South African Register, a new initiative came along to say that all fitness professionals had to have a degree, and that sort of superseded what we'd done. So you have to start to work again in terms of this actually isn't going to work anymore. So there'll be some countries that require degree level training and other countries that won't. And you have to think, well, how does your qualification link in with a degree, or how can it be delivered in isolation? So it's very different from country to country. So, our advice when we talked the other week was try not to concentrate on too many regions at the same time. Pick three areas that you want to focus on. Think about how you're going to do that, but don't try and spread yourself too thinly with too many countries, because there's so many different requirements.
There are. So did you encounter many other kind of challenges along the way? Was there anything that you recall from the Middle East or from your current work in APAC? Is there anything you kind of, this was a significant challenge and this is how we overcome it?
As an example, I think Reps UAE and Active IQ, Reps have their own specific requirements about face-to-face delivery and face-to-face assessment, which we do also in the UK, guided learning hours and everything in terms of off-qual requirements. But we know from the pandemic and before that. There's different ways to reach an outcome, and face-to-face delivery can be brilliant, so can digital delivery be brilliant. Digital assessment is effective, so can invigilated assessment be. So we've obviously, from an efficiency perspective, tried to go down the digital route as much as we can. We have an e-learning platform, we have digital content, we have online assessment, but where we might see a model working where there's a more of a predominance of distance learning for things like anatomy, physiology, etc., and an online assessment, reps UAE might have their own requirements as to face-to-face delivery and what they'd expect, and the two sides didn't necessarily match up. So we've had to make some changes to make sure we meet those local requirements, which can make it less cost-effective to do that. But you've just got to work with what the country actually requires and needs.
Yeah, and in terms of the digital side of delivery, what kind of proportion of your qualifications rely on digital assessment techniques? What's the kind of ratio?
Well, oh crikey! It's the beauty of it is that if you're doing a gym instructing or personal training qualification, roughly half of that is theory, anatomy, physiology, and you can learn much more about the way muscles work and bones and heart and lungs from an online platform rather than trying to describe it manually in a classroom. So that's the great aspect of that. We tend to have an external assessment, which is a multi-choice assessment, and it's usually digital, but there's a lot of practical assessment as well in terms of face-to-face practical sessions in gyms and with clients. So it's 50-50.
That's good. And so finally, from your kind of experience in these kind of expansions, have you seen significant value for your organization? Have you seen it as being something that's been really worthwhile for you doing, or is it something you'd say, it's challenging, it's yes, you get some business from it, but it's just too hard? Where are you on that scale? Obviously you're kind of carrying on, so I'm imagining you're kind of saying you have to go for it. So is your advice, go for it and try it? And is there any advice you could add in there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the early days, there were sometimes those thoughts, this is just too hard and more trouble than it's worth. And from a quality assurance perspective, you've really got to have your eye on the ball in terms of what's happening. The more you can rely on external assessment, the better. Once you gain traction, though, once you start to understand what you're doing, we've definitely found the value of it, and we've had to rely on it as well. The qualifications market in the UK isn't growing massively for vocational technical qualifications. It's particularly challenging for the active leisure sector. There's skill shortages, skills gaps, and certification numbers have gone down for our sector in the UK. So we had to find a way to counteract that. And the more we've done it, the more experience we have of it, then the easier it becomes to do. So I'd say it's definitely worth trying. Work with the right people. Work with people like you mentioned, Jonathan Ledger. Get advice on how to work overseas, what's the best approach, and take it in stages. But it's definitely worth a try.
Excellent. Well, that's a brilliant example. And I assume if people are kind of interested in learning a bit more about your experiences, you're more than happy for people to reach out and connect with you and ask you a couple of questions.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We've learned, different awarding organisations in different subject areas, we'll have different experiences, but it's really interesting to learn from each other and look at approaches and how to focus on things or not, where you should focus your energies. So collaboration is definitely key.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time today. It's lovely to hear your success story, really, from the work that you guys have done and the things that you've achieved. So hopefully it'll be a model for lots of other organisations to do the same, really. Like you say, qualifications market is quite competitive, I think, in the UK, and it's not an easy space to operate in. But I appreciate your time and your input. So thank you, and well done.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you for that, Jenny. It was an excellent insight there into their achievements, really, and hats off to them. Done a brilliant job, because it can be quite a daunting exercise. I know I've been involved in projects in the past, looking at the Middle East and places like that, and exporting out and landing and expanding and all those kind of things that go with growth. And particularly the point that Jenny was making about the fact that it's been very hard to grow within the UK because it is a very competitive market. And now they've got the kind of the confidence, I suppose, with the online proctoring opportunity. Then it really does give them a chance to seek out new spaces to operate. So thank you for that, Jenny. And I'm going to leave you with a reminder of the upcoming Looking Beyond Assessment workshops that happen in August. Get yourself signed up on there. It's a 1 hour workshop with me sitting down and going through some really quite interesting and fascinating future, really, for assessment and what we can learn from what's going on in the generative AI space. So I'll play a reminder there, and I'll see you next week for the webinar. Thank you.
Hello, Tim and A. Hope you're all safe and well. Now, have you been looking and hearing about all these amazing generative AI solutions, but not quite putting it into the frame of how it's going to affect assessment? Well, I'm running 4 workshops in August. They're going to be repeated sessions, so pick whichever one you can make. And I'm going to be looking at the amazing solutions that are coming along. So generative AI solutions for image generation, video generation, music and audio generation. We're looking at cloning as well, looking at cloning yourself or how the impact that might have on the assessment space. And finally, we're looking at augmented space and the convergence of all these technologies that are going to be coming along. So join me in August for one of my amazing Looking Beyond Assessment workshops. I'll see you there.